we land and they're not around, but then they'd heard the helicopter coming, and so they come, you know, you see them in the distance come running, and they got weapons, and I'm firing weapons in the air, and I think at even one point a guy pointed at me and fired a pinched off a round. Well, I think all they had were blanks, fortunately at that time. You remember your first impressions, just the kind of the despair and hopelessness of people. You know, it's poor, obviously. They're eking out a living, selling stuff on the street, you know. But yeah, just the lack of hope that you could see in their faces and their eyes, you know. So that really struck me, the need. I remember in the Army I'd taken, it's called Defense Language Aptitude Test, and I was just average. I wasn't, so I thought that would be a trouble. But, you know, it's hard work, but you can do it. Fortunately, Indonesia was a fairly early, easy language to learn. You don't have to worry about tenses and plural, 2 books, buku buku, you know, say it twice. So, you know, there's some simplicity to it. If you learn to figure out, if you can figure out the root word, there's all kinds of suffixes and prefixes, but if you get to the root word, well then you can, you know, get the gist of the meaning of most everything. So, flying in Papua, weather is a challenge. You know, it changes very quickly. It's tropical, you know, 4 degrees south of the equator. It's a mountainous spine ridge, runs from east to west across the island, 14,000 foot peaks generally. So typical day, clear in the morning till about 9 o'clock. Clouds start developing on the ridges on the high range. 11, 12 o'clock, high ridge is all closed in clouds. 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, the passes start closing down. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's solid. So it's typical. Obviously, there are variations of that. So then there's a wet season and a dry season. The South Coast weather is different than the North Coast on the north side. So yeah, obviously you learn the patterns and how to read the weather, and yeah. But a helicopter is a great tool in that. You know, you can slow down and hover and look over this ridge and back up and go to someplace else. And yeah, so sometimes you can't go through with a helicopter. So I've spent many hours in a riverbed just waiting for the weather to go by, or sometimes you get stuck and you can't, you know, you spend the night in a village. So weather's a challenge. Yeah, because we do, Helimission has great maintenance. We do our own maintenance, so obviously very concerned and good quality. Just, you know, getting parts, obviously a thing. I can tell you a story about a new rotor blade for a bell. You know, what's $100,000 for a rotor blade? So you order a rotor blade, it comes to the port in Jakarta, and you know, there's always customs, and you have to deal with fighting off bribes and, you know, getting it through customs and all that. Well, at times they change the rules, you know, on what the rules are, and so they diverted the boat with the rotor blade to another port, you know, 50 or 100 miles away. And so then they decide there that they're going to put it on a truck, ship it to Jakarta. Well, the guy that put it on the truck decided he liked the box. So he took the rotor blade out of the box and just with chain come-alongs starts ratcheting the rotor blade down on the back of a, you know, the bed of a huge truck. Well, you know, the tolerance on the rotor blade depends on where you make a ding. It can be, you know, 10,000ths of an inch or something, and you have a little ding and then you scrap the $100,000 rotor blade. So we found out about that, and we had a contact in Jakarta that went and inspected it. And fortunately, where they ratcheted it down and they did put a few dings in it, it wasn't in a critical area. So, but yeah, you're always subject to things like that, you know, getting parts. Obviously, it depends on the roughness of the terrain, but just around the corner in Wamena, people would take 3 days to get to Wamena, and I could fly there in 10 minutes. yeah, we flew typically 6 days a week, So as I mentioned about the weather patterns, best flying weather is in the morning. So your sunrise, 5 o'clock, you tried to get off 5:30, 6, something like that, to get a jump on the weather. And you're, sometimes it depends on the maintenance schedule. You might schedule one flight, but it's typically 1 or 2 flights a day is what you schedule. And then if the maintenance schedule is heavy, well, it's typically 1 or none, when you're in the maintenance. If the ship's down or a big inspection, 100-hour or other big inspection. But yeah, from 6 in the morning till 6 at night, typically 12-hour days, 6 days a week a lot of times. Sometimes on medevacs on Sunday, but we would just fly medevacs on Sunday. We had a request from a Papuan pastor and the government to fly that pastor and a team of peace delegates to go talk to the rebels to get them to make peace, and talk about rebuilding some of the schools and things that they'd burnt. So I agreed that we would go to Quiawagi, was the name of the village. It's actually the highest airstrip in Papua. It's 9,000 feet. And so I agreed that we'd take this team up there and, try to see what the rebels had to say. So it was, by the time we got it all organized, it was later in the afternoon. And I guess the mistake I made was there was the delegates from the Indonesia side, they were mostly Papuans, but there was one that was maybe half. He wasn't pure Papuan. And when we land and they're not around, but then they'd heard the helicopter coming, and so they come, you see them in the distance come running, and they got weapons, and I'm firing weapons in the air, and I think at even one point a guy pointed at me and fired a pinched off a round. Well, I think all they had were blanks, fortunately at that time. But they hauled us down to this little shack, and we had to listen to this rant by one of their leaders about all the atrocities that the Indonesians had committed, and on and on and on. And after that rant, then his demand was that he was going to hold one of us until we could ensure that their message got to the head of the United Nations. Now you got to remember their worldview is limited. They thought that I, as a Westerner, a white guy, and Kofi Annan, the head of the UN, talk daily on the phone. So you have to tell Kofi this, okay? But one of their demands was that they wanted me to give them internet, and they were going to take hold one of our people as hostage until they saw that, the pastor that I brought was wise and said, no, you guys invited us here. We're not going to leave one. We're all going to stay together. And, we'll report what you say, but we're not going to leave anybody here behind, And so they agreed to that. So just before dark, and actually that battery in the helicopter was low that day. And at 9,000 feet, it's a slow start for a turbine. So I think it was the full 60-second start, or maybe a few seconds over before the thing cranked. That was kind of a near hostage situation. But you're not just a helicopter pilot, you can go be a jungle pilot or a bush pilot in lots of places, but there's a lot more than just being a pilot or mechanic. You have to have a heart for the people, and develop relationships. But as far as waiting, there's a huge reward. I would often tell people, even today, that's the best job in the world for me. As I said, best job in the world, absolutely. After I've been back now for 2 years and a few months. First year is hard. I missed the work,
Thank you guys for watching this video. If you'd like to follow us in this journey, please hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. The links to both are in the description.
Fly by Faith is 100% donor supported. If you would like to partner with us in this endeavor, please go to flybyfaith.org/give.